Sigh, oh, my little one. She's so unhappy. I didn't even realize he meant me being the third. This all happened after our honeymoon, when I went to visit my husband's parents and join them for dinner. I was completely shocked by my father-in-law's sudden words. He let out a long, heavy sigh and blurted something that made my mother-in-law jump in surprise. She smacked his thigh sharply, clearly upset by what he had said. I thought to myself, what is he doing? He must be drunk. Yes, exactly, I wanted to say. Why are you drinking when you normally don't? Please don't drink. But my mother-in-law spoke quickly, trying to calm the situation. Don't. He must just be in a good mood today. I thought, a good mood? That's what makes him say something like that? Then he muttered one more thing, holding up his glass. That single remark completely changed the atmosphere at the dinner table. Just moments before, everything had felt cheerful and warm, especially since we were sharing gifts I had brought from our honeymoon in Hawaii. But now my father-in-law, clearly drunk, looked confused and embarrassed. His face showed discomfort, maybe even irritation. My husband quickly tried to change the subject, but I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. That night, it kept bothering me, lingering in my mind. Later, my husband and I talked quietly about it. Hey, about what Dad said earlier. I started. What do you mean? He asked. You know, the thing he said that made Mom react so strongly, what did he even mean? My dad was drunk. You don't know, he replied lightly. But isn't it strange? I pressed. It seemed like nothing, just a small comment. Yet Mom reacted so strongly. It's hard not to notice. She was glaring at him the rest of the evening, and her expression didn't get better at all. I couldn't understand why he would say something about me being the third. Why bring that up at all? The way my mother-in-law reacted made me even more uneasy. That night, the words kept echoing in my mind, and I just couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was hiding underneath all of it. Maybe they had a fight or something. Don't worry about Dad and Mom. They didn't say anything to you, so why are you thinking about it? My husband didn't pay much attention to their behavior. He treated it like it was nothing, just a small family moment. But for some reason, it kept bothering me. I couldn't shake that uneasy feeling about what my father-in-law had said, the part about me being the third. Looking back now, I think it was like fate itself was grabbing my shoulder and saying, pay attention, something's important here. It wasn't just a simple, forgettable issue. Little memories and thoughts kept popping into my mind, refusing to leave me alone. So, about a week later, I decided to visit my father-in-law at the hardware store he runs. Dad, are you busy? I asked when I arrived. Huh? Oh. Sigh, what brings you here at this hour all of a sudden? He said, surprised. I was out on an errand nearby and thought of you, so I stopped by for a bit, I explained. Have you eaten lunch yet? Not yet, he replied. Perfect. Then let's eat together. Is there a place around here you like? There's that Tang place in front. Shall we go there? Lunch, oh? Okay, wait a moment, he said, still a bit flustered by my sudden visit, but I could tell he was pleased too. Thinking back, my father-in-law had always given a good first impression. His gentle eyes, the warm and kind expression on his face, it was clear from the start that he was a good man, someone with a soft and welcoming presence. As we walked to the Tang restaurant, I made small talk, updating him about recent events and our lives. But honestly, that was just a way to ease into the real reason I was there. It was only bait to get to the truth. Once we ordered our Tang and settled in, I carefully brought up the topic that had been weighing on my mind. Dad, about last week. I began, trying to sound casual but steady. What was it you were going to say? About me being the third, I added, offering him some water as I spoke. The moment I asked, I could feel it. There was definitely something there. Even just asking the question seemed to fluster him, which only made me more certain that this wasn't a trivial matter. Honestly, I could have just let it go. Maybe I could have ignored it. But it was eating at me too much to leave unsaid. I needed to know. Dad, what did you mean when you said I was the third? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I honestly don't understand what you're talking about, he said at first, looking confused. I was drunk that day, that's why I said something like that. It wasn't just drunken nonsense. It wasn't the kind of thing I normally think about saying, even after drinking. But please tell me what you mean. I'm asking because we're family now, I said carefully. I don't want to live with this uncomfortable feeling between us. I just want to understand. Family, you know? He paused, and for a long moment, he seemed to chew over the word family. It wasn't the food in front of him he was thinking about, not the sialiang tang we had ordered. It was that word I had said. Then, suddenly, he looked me straight in the eyes and said quietly, almost painfully, Sigh, I can't use the word family with you. I guess I'm just too unnecessarily conscientious for that. My heart sank.
Why?
What was so painful? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I drank that day because I couldn't face it. I couldn't look at you, knowing how much it hurt me, he admitted. Don't be shocked, but you're truly the third wife. I froze. The third wife? What do you mean by that? Exactly what I said, he replied quietly. Before you, Yong-hoon had 2 other wives. At that moment, I felt a strange mixture of shock, curiosity, and disbelief. Life sometimes throws moments at you that make you realize how smooth and peaceful your own life has been until then. I laughed nervously, partly out of disbelief. People often lose their judgment and want to deny reality when they are caught off guard. I told myself he must be joking. Dad, you joke too? I said, trying to smile. 2 wives? So before he married me, there were 2 women he was with seriously enough that it almost led to marriage? It's not like that, he said. Both of them had proper weddings and children. I blinked. Children? That's a lot to take in. Honestly, that's a bit hard to hear, Dad. Makes me feel a little left out, I guess. No, it's not a joke, he said, shaking his head. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just couldn't stop it from happening. I could feel the weight of his words settle in the air. The mood wasn't light, and the story he told was far from easy to process. It was a revelation that changed everything I thought I knew about my husband's past and, in some ways, about my own place in this family. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat and said quietly, Dad, thank you for telling me. Even if it's hard to hear, I needed to know the truth. He nodded slowly, his face filled with a mix of regret and relief, as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted from his shoulders. It's all my fault, my father said quietly, tears welling up in his eyes. Because of those 2 people, how many others have had to suffer and endure pain? Only when I saw him cry did I realize that what he was saying wasn't a joke, it was the truth. What followed next, the story my father finally shared, was truly shocking. It was the kind of story that was hard to believe even when I was hearing it firsthand. I wanted to deny it, but the truth was undeniable. My husband and I had actually met through a matchmaking agency. I wanted to get married before I reached my mid-30s. By that point, I already had a house I'd purchased through a housing lottery, and I had a stable job. I thought I should get married before it's too late. I had tried blind dates set up by friends, but nothing seemed to click. There were always little things that didn't match, and no matter how many times I went on dates, none of them led to a real relationship. Finally, a colleague suggested the matchmaking agency. Park, why don't you try joining a matchmaking agency? My sister actually met her husband that way. A matchmaking agency? I asked, surprised. I never thought about that.
Yes.
My sister is lucky to meet someone great there, my colleague continued. You might meet someone perfect too. They check all the conditions, career, background, personality, so you can invest your time and emotions efficiently. If you meet someone through the agency, even a happy newlywed life is more guaranteed. I admit, I had never really thought much about going to a matchmaking agency, but seeing my sister's success completely changed my mind. I had assumed I would meet someone naturally through dating and eventually marry that person. But as time went on, I realized that waiting for romance wasn't a guarantee, and watching my age tick upward made me anxious. So, after discussing it with my parents, I decided to register with a matchmaking agency. That's how I ended up meeting my husband. The agency made it easier to meet someone who matched the criteria I was looking for: education, career, and even the kind of appearance I preferred. Out of all the matches I had, my husband was the fourth person I met. Even among other candidates, he was the one whose personality clicked with mine the most, whose interests aligned, and whose conversation flowed naturally. In a way, it was like the stars had aligned. Even though the process was practical and structured, I could feel that our connection was real, and that's how our journey toward marriage began. Even though I was in a bit of a hurry to get married, my parents advised me to at least experience all 4 seasons of dating before tying the knot. So my husband and I dated for about a year before we got engaged. That 1 year turned out to be the happiest period of my entire life with him. Every moment felt light, full of laughter and little gestures that made life feel magical. Tada. Jaina, remember how you said you wanted to see this? He said one evening, handing me a small envelope. I looked at it, puzzled. What is this? He grinned. Isn't it the Aladdin musical ticket you mentioned? And look at this, the seats are VIP. I blinked in surprise. Wait, how did you get these? I never expected this. He shrugged casually. The ticket seller had booked them, but she had to go to Changwon that weekend for family reasons. She was going to cancel, but I saw the tickets were going to be resold, so I jumped at the chance and got them, even gave a little extra to secure them. You even paid extra? I asked. Yeah, he said with a smile. They were already expensive, but you wanted to see it. And I figured if we're going to go, we should sit properly and enjoy it. I felt a warmth in my chest.
Wow.
I'm really touched. I only mentioned it casually and you remembered. You're so thoughtful. He laughed. Why else wouldn't I? But seriously, why haven't you married yet? I can't imagine your girlfriends letting you stay single this long. I told you, he replied. I just didn't have time. I'm not the type to waste it. Throughout our relationship, my husband was always attentive and kind. I sometimes wondered why someone like him hadn't married yet, but I quickly reminded myself that the right person comes along at the right time. And besides, because we met through the matchmaking agency, I felt confident that our future together was secure. Of course, even the agency couldn't erase the realities of his past marriages. His first marriage had lasted about 1.5 years. When I first heard that he divorced, I thought it had been a proper, legal marriage. I had no idea how complicated things would get. Then I learned that just 6 months after his first wife left, he brought in a second wife. 6 months. I couldn't wrap my head around how rushed it all seemed. And apparently, the second wife was already expecting a child. I was even more bewildered when I found out he had never even seen the grandchild from his first marriage. And now, the second wife had her own child too. I didn't know whether to be happy for him, shocked, or completely confused.
It was a lot to process.
According to my father, he even had a wedding ceremony with the second woman, the one who was expecting a child. Compared to his first wedding, it was a smaller event, but apparently, the second marriage caused a lot of gossip among people around him. The shocking part? Because of that history, almost everyone who came to my wedding, the third marriage, was somehow connected to those past marriages. That's actually why we wanted a quiet wedding. We had decided on a small, intimate ceremony from the start. I had already thought big weddings were too flashy and unnecessary, so when the idea of inviting only close family and friends came up, I wholeheartedly agreed. It was supposed to be simple and meaningful. But then, I discovered something even crazier.
What?
You're saying everyone who came was fake? I asked, completely bewildered. I didn't even know such a thing existed. I added, shocked. I had assumed that people were invited normally, maybe informed by my husband's mother. But apparently, when the news of Yonghoon's third marriage reached others, even my own sister hadn't heard about it. I thought to myself, okay, they probably just didn't invite anyone to this third wedding. But when I arrived at the city hall, the place was packed. I couldn't believe it. How could so many people show up, and why was all of this kept hidden from me? How could they keep such a secret, and I, foolishly, just got married thinking everything was normal? You can imagine how that felt, right? My father said quietly. The people who deliberately deceived you. I was one of them. I'm guilty too. I wanted to tell you everything since the first meeting, but I couldn't. I'm so sorry. Truly, I am. It was like finding out that the bridge you had been carefully walking on, a bridge you thought was solid and safe, was actually poorly built and shaky underneath. All the care, all the planning, all the precautions, and yet the foundation was weak, and I had never even known. I have always been a perfectionist, even as a child. I lived life trying to do everything flawlessly, and yet here I was completely blindsided. The thought that my carefully considered marriage was built on hidden secrets was exhausting and almost unbearable. I was always very sensitive to mistakes. Even small failures felt impossible to accept, and I held myself to such high standards that slipping up was unbearable. So, to me, the idea that the man I had carefully chosen, approached with full intention, had deceived me in marriage, it was devastating. But the problem didn't stop there. If the only issue had been that he loved me so much that he wanted to hide his 2 failed marriages, maybe I could have forgiven that. Maybe I could have understood it as a misguided attempt to protect me from the past. But there were darker, uglier secrets behind those marriages, things so shocking and repulsive that I could hardly imagine they existed. How could you just watch all of this happen? I asked my father-in-law, my voice shaking. Were you really in such a rush to see your son married? Did it matter so much that you went along with all of this? It's not like that, he said quickly, his voice trembling. Really, it wasn't. If it had been, I could never be this honest with you now. I couldn't have. Then why are you telling me now? I asked. If you could say it now, you could have said it before the marriage. I'm sorry, he admitted, his voice breaking. I didn't have the courage. I was afraid of how my wife, your mother, would react if I told her the truth. I stared at him, speechless. My father-in-law, so composed and strict for so many years, now had tears streaming down his face as he confessed. And yet, I realized that I had no right to resent him. After all, it wasn't entirely his fault. Without his intervention, I might have stayed a victim of that fraudulent marriage even longer, suffering deeper wounds. Because of him, I had been spared. I wasn't supposed to feel anger. I was supposed to feel grateful. And anyone who knows his personality can understand just how much courage it took for him to finally reveal the truth. He admitted, too, that he himself regretted the marriage from the very beginning. He called it a mistake, a union that should never have happened in the first place. I groaned inwardly. This family, the Song family, it's so frustrating. I feel like I could go crazy. Why are you acting like this? My father-in-law muttered, seeing my expression. It's because of your wife, I said, feeling a little exasperated. Not just her, he said, shaking his head. There's someone else who can turn your world upside down.
Who?
Your wife? What is she doing now? Why is she making such a big deal about having such a remarkable son? I asked, still trying to wrap my head around everything. It was overwhelming. The layers of secrecy, guilt, regret, and family drama were suffocating, but at the same time, I understood that the truth, finally revealed, was a lifeline. It explained so much, and yet it left me reeling. That's it. Yes, it's because of the things he did for us. He helped us so much, everything from the vacation house to all the other support. That vacation house. Oh, that cursed vacation house. If I had known my life would turn out this way, I never would have let that vacation house control my life. It almost ruined everything. It saved my family's home. Yes, but does that mean I have to live my whole life like a slave? No, it's not that. Someone tried to reason with me. It's just that your father did so much for you. Of course, he would expect a lot in return. But you can't just refuse everything. You already got the house. If you don't accept it, what? Do you want to live in a tiny boarding room? If you don't have the ability to give even one room to your child, why even get married? Apparently, my father-in-law and my husband's grandfather were childhood friends. They had lost touch over the years, but when they heard that my mother's family's vacation house had been mortgaged, they immediately stepped in to help. After that, my husband's family was regarded as benefactors, and they continued to live with that reputation. Eventually, they arranged marriages for their unmarried children to maintain those family ties. My father-in-law was naturally the type who rarely expressed his own opinion, and my mother-in-law agreed because she saw the family as benefactors and wanted to honor them. In the end, my husband's parents chose this marriage, but apparently, they had many complaints during their married life. Those complaints only became worse after my father-in-law was forced to leave his job. But here's the funny part. Life with the in-laws wasn't really that difficult. They provided us with a house, and my father-in-law's salary had been good before his company started struggling. The real problem was my mother-in-law. She had ambitions that clearly exceeded reality, and her expectations were sky-high. She demanded more than anyone could reasonably provide. Honestly, I don't think there's anyone else in the world who's married to such an incapable man like my father. A powerless husband with a powerless father, and then the only capable support comes from the in-laws. So you spend your life constantly worrying about them, always walking on eggshells. I often wondered why I had been born into such a fate. Hey, aren't you going out? Go get some work, do anything to earn a little money. Why are you just sitting around the house like that? You're driving me crazy. Hearing complaints like that almost every day slowly broke my father's spirit. He knew he wasn't perfect and that our family had problems, but constant criticism gnawed at him like termites, eating away at his confidence and leaving him feeling hopeless. Anyone who knows him would understand. Day after day, he would hear things like, "Because of you, life is so hard. My life turned out this way because of you. You're useless." Even if you didn't believe it at first, hearing it constantly makes you start thinking, is it really my fault? Am I the reason for all this? It was so painful that my father-in-law once drank heavily and even brought up divorce. "If living with me is so hard, then let's just divorce," he said once, frustrated. "You can go live with a more capable man if you want." I laughed nervously when I heard that. Wait, you're bringing up divorce? Isn't that supposed to be my line? How dare you even say that to me? What was I supposed to do? If he was tired of living with her, complaining constantly but then refusing to actually divorce, what was I supposed to do? Why should I be living with him under those circumstances? Even then, my father-in-law kept thinking practically. "When your mother and father pass away, there'll be an inheritance," he said. "Then you can get along with your sister-in-law peacefully and take your share." I was stunned. Wait, what? Are you saying you're just staying with her because of the inheritance? You married me for my parents' property. Yes, he admitted calmly. I know it sounds shameless, but someone has to be strong to raise Yong-hoon properly. That's why I became so tough. Divorce? Don't even joke about it, not until your mother and father pass away, at least. I asked him, then why did you continue living like that? He explained quietly. I couldn't bring myself to say it. I was treated like a useless head of the family. I thought I just had to endure it. I told myself, I'll bear it for now. Maybe one day, after your mother and father are gone, I could finally divorce. But until then, I had no courage. I just kept telling myself to wait. And that's how he lived. Every day, he endured being treated poorly by my mother-in-law. Seeing his own father treated like that, what do you think he learned? He learned to be ignored, to be walked over, to pretend everything was fine. Even his small hardware store, which he had worked hard to set up, he never bragged about to his friends. He was too embarrassed to admit he was running it. Dad, why don't you wear a suit? I asked one day, noticing his simple attire. Huh? Oh, working in a suit is uncomfortable for me, he replied. I can't work properly in one, so I just don't. And that simple choice reflected so much about his life, how he endured silently, how he lived modestly, and how he carried the weight of everyone else's expectations while rarely asking for anything for himself. Dad, why don't you wear a proper suit when you go to work? I asked him one day. Mincheol's dad and Yongsun's dad both go to the office in suits, but you just go out like you're stepping into a small shop in front of the house. And please, don't nod at me when I pass by. It's embarrassing. My father-in-law, already drained from years of constant gaslighting and emotional pressure, couldn't respond. He felt helpless. He blamed himself silently, thinking, if I were more proper, if I wore a neat suit and went to work like a real office worker, maybe my son wouldn't have said these things. He lived for years as a father who felt inferior to his own child, and then, about 5 years ago, a sudden event changed everything. My husband, out of nowhere, announced he was getting married and brought a woman home. "Oh, you must be Hee-jin. It's so nice to meet you," my mother-in-law said cheerfully. Hee-jin was delicate and graceful, with hands so gentle and posture so refined that it was clear she had been raised with care. She had even studied ballet in Russia, which meant her education must have been expensive. My father-in-law had helped her a lot financially. "So, her family must be wealthy?" someone asked. "No, not really," my father-in-law explained. "But since she wanted to study ballet, I supported her. She's so humble about it too." It wasn't the kind of thing anyone could just allow without thought, but he had done it because she loved it. He even prepared her favorite Korean dish, tteokbokki, specially for her. "Even her taste is refined," my mother-in-law remarked. The bride-to-be was a ballerina, trained from head to toe in grace and elegance, with every movement and word reflecting her upbringing. My mother-in-law noticed all of it immediately and described it to anyone who would listen. "Seon-young, Young-hoon's getting married next month," she told friends. "The bride is gorgeous. She studied ballet in Mokdong. You can tell from her every movement that she was raised well. Her family seems wealthy. The house is in Mokdong too." From the moment the wedding date was set, my mother-in-law couldn't stop calling friends to talk about it. "The girl looks rich and refined. Her family must have money. That's why this is a good match." It was clear that her focus was less on who the bride really was and more on the family status. Of course, my father-in-law had no say in the marriage. But after the wedding, when my mother-in-law learned more about the bride's actual family situation, her complaints began. She was displeased with the reality behind the wealth and status that had seemed so perfect before the marriage. Yes, it was absolutely unbelievable. Honestly, it was a fraudulent marriage. A total scam. "What happened?"
Why are you saying that? Someone asked.
"It's Hee-jin," I explained, exasperated. "I thought she came from a wealthy family, but it turns out she's practically broke. Even the Mokdong house is just a lease, and the ballet academy she runs is drowning in debt." "But she studied ballet from a young age, right? And even went abroad." "Yes, that's true. But sending her abroad doesn't magically fix the financial problems. Sure, they wanted to nurture her talent, but in the end, her family has no real plan. No solid foundation. Even if the ballet academy does well for a while, it won't last forever. And now they want to somehow attach themselves to our family through Young-hoon. They're basically planning to leech off him." "I can't believe this," I muttered. "We should have looked into the family properly before the marriage. I won't let them get away with this." According to my mother-in-law, that was the first time she even mentioned my husband during the whole marriage process. She had never once expressed any interest in him before, so when she suddenly brought him up, it seemed strange. What she didn't know was that a secret and ugly plan between Hee-jin and her mother was already in motion, completely without my father-in-law's knowledge. Then came the news that the first daughter-in-law was expecting a girl. That's when my mother-in-law began preparing for divorce. Divorce? Young-hoon divorce?
What are you talking about?
I asked, shocked. "These days, our marriage isn't going well. We can't keep living like this," my mother-in-law explained. "Why did you fight? Hee-jin is pregnant. She's bound to be sensitive right now. She's going through so much. Can't you be a little patient?" "Dad, if you don't understand, stay out of it," my husband replied. "Divorce is a matter between my wife and me. No one, not even you, should interfere. Still, we haven't even been married that long. Divorce isn't something you decide so easily." Of course, my husband, who normally ignored his father's words, didn't care at that moment either. He just went along with his mother. In the end, as soon as the baby was born, they severed the relationship completely, leaving no connection at all. My father-in-law had no idea what was really going on. All he knew was what my mother-in-law casually told her friends, that the first marriage ended because of personality differences. He had no clue about the bigger, uglier truth behind it. Even by his standards, he thought the whole situation was wrong. How could anyone divorce a daughter-in-law who had already given birth to a grandchild? It just didn't make sense. He felt heavy-hearted and uneasy about the whole situation, sensing that something was very wrong. Then, just 6 months later, another shocking event happened. My mother-in-law suddenly brought home a second woman, claiming she was the next daughter-in-law. And, to make matters even more complicated, this woman was already pregnant before the marriage. Pregnant? So that's why she has to get married? I asked, astonished. Yes, my father-in-law said quietly. If she's already expecting, of course they have to marry. There's no reason not to. But she's due in December, I said. And, he asked, slightly annoyed. What does the due date matter? Well, there are things like that to consider, I explained. He didn't need to know all the details. The woman was already waiting, and the wedding date had been set because of her pregnancy. Even then, my father-in-law thought something felt strange. The timing didn't make sense. He suspected they might be trying to rush the wedding before her belly showed, but even then, the dates didn't add up. In reality, the wedding happened lightning fast, barely a month after the marriage was first mentioned. It was as if it had been arranged overnight. But here's the most shocking part. The divorce from the first daughter-in-law was finalized in December, the same month the second wife was due. And this was just a week after the baby was born.
What?
Another divorce? Youngju, what on earth are you doing? I asked in disbelief. How can you even think about divorce again? This is the second one this year. Well, my mother-in-law replied, matter-of-factly, it's because divorce was justified. Why should I care what you think? But how can you just decide that? You've only been married a short time, I exclaimed. And now, suddenly divorce again? No sense of responsibility at all. It's a fraudulent marriage, she said coldly. They told us the child was going to be a boy. That's why my son married her. But now the baby turned out to be a girl. So, yes, that's why I decided to end it.
What?
So, because the child wasn't a boy, they decided to divorce? Young-hoon, is that really true? Dad, I wanted a son, my mother-in-law said firmly. That's why I agreed to marry him when they said the baby would be a boy. But now it's a girl. Isn't this a fraudulent marriage? How can they just divorce over something like that? I tried to reason with her. Maybe there are circumstances you didn't know about. And does it really matter if it's a boy or a girl? How can anyone decide to divorce because of that? She shook her head in frustration. Tomorrow I'll handle this myself. Dad, you stay out of it. My father-in-law had never really been treated like the head of the family. He'd never been shown respect, but at that moment, he felt a new kind of anger rising inside him. The thought that his son's divorce could create trouble for the second daughter-in-law, and the injustice of divorcing a daughter-in-law just because the baby was a girl, it was unbearable. While he was trying to figure out what to do, the second daughter-in-law appeared at the house. She had just come from the maternity care center, exhausted and unable to even walk properly. Father, please, you have to talk to Young-hoon. He didn't mean to lie, he just wanted a son. He was scared that if he told the truth, he would be rejected. He can't terminate the pregnancy either. Please save me. I can't stay married to Young-hoon under these circumstances, she pleaded, her voice trembling. Okay, my father-in-law said quietly to himself. I'll try to persuade him. But don't cry so much, you're exhausted. Let's get you back to the maternity center first. Seeing his daughter-in-law crying so helplessly, drained from the birth and from all the emotional stress, broke his heart. It was all happening because of his son, yet he had no idea what to do or how to intervene. The guilt weighed heavily on him. That's when he finally raised his voice at my mother-in-law for the first time. Young-hoon cannot treat her this way, he shouted. What do you mean, she snapped back. I mean, can or cannot. You can't just make him live with someone he married under false pretenses, while punishing her for circumstances beyond her control. How can you cast aside a daughter-in-law who just gave birth? Does it matter if the baby is a boy or a girl? She deserves better. He had reached his breaking point. After watching his son make mistakes, listening to his wife's unreasonable demands, and seeing the second daughter-in-law suffer so much, he couldn't stay silent. Young-hoon had a child. Even with Heejin it was the same. How can anyone reject a daughter-in-law who has given birth? Does it matter if it's a boy or a girl? Absolutely not, he yelled, his voice echoing through the house. Did something get into that woman's head? My mother-in-law said angrily. Since when have you been so involved in Yang-hoon's business? Why are you raising your voice like that? My father-in-law took a deep breath. I'm only speaking up because I don't want my son going down the wrong path. I'm trying to protect him. You know nothing about Yang-hoon, she snapped. You don't know what's good for him at all.
What do you even know about life?
About decisions? You think you're the expert. What did you just say? He asked, trying to stay calm. I'm telling you, she continued, if this divorce with Yang-hoon goes through, I'm divorcing too. You hear me? My father-in-law was furious, but at that moment, he had actually been seriously considering going through with a divorce himself. But then something completely unexpected happened. His relatively healthy mother-in-law suddenly collapsed. She lost consciousness, and everyone had to rush to her side. My mother-in-law stayed at her mother's bedside the entire time, caring for her day and night. In the end, my father-in-law's chance to act on his own divorce plans completely slipped away. Nature had intervened, and he had no choice but to step back. He spent several days feeling deeply troubled and helpless, worried about everything that had happened with his son, the second daughter-in-law, and now his mother. Eventually, his mother-in-law was admitted to a nursing hospital. My father-in-law went to the hospital, planning to take over some of the caregiving duties and relieve my mother-in-law for a while. That's when he discovered something shocking. While checking in and trying to help manage the situation, he overheard a conversation about the first daughter-in-law. Mom, did Yangja handle the text properly? Did she agree to everything? She won't try to change the deal later, right? One voice asked. Well, there's no way she could go back on it now, another replied. She got the full child support payment in a lump sum. Her conscience won't let her lie about it later. Hearing this, my father-in-law realized just how deeply his son and the daughter-in-law had been manipulated. Even after all the lies, they had managed to secure the child support money and get out of the first marriage without a single issue. My goodness, he thought. They lied through the entire marriage, and not once did their faces change. They pulled it off perfectly. He realized, too, that even if he had tried to fight for a divorce himself, it would have been pointless. The first daughter-in-law had already secured her financial settlement, and the second daughter-in-law came from a family with money. There was no need for an unnecessary, long and bitter fight. My father-in-law finally understood why things had unfolded the way they did. It wasn't about fairness or justice. It was about strategy, survival, and timing. And in a way, he was relieved that he had been spared from getting involved in a fight that could have lasted forever, serving no one but making everyone miserable. It's kind of surprising, my father-in-law said, shaking his head. Their wealth isn't bad at all, but imagine how much better it would be if my son had just stepped up himself. You got to remember this. Don't go past 4 times, okay? Yes, I replied quietly. You see, he continued, the way that Yangchen fortune teller predicted my life, I had no real luck at all until now. My life, which had nothing going for it, finally got a chance to move forward. That's all thanks to that fortune teller. Without them, even your future wouldn't have worked out. I listened, wide-eyed, as he went on. Yangchen's predictions are always accurate. Your son's jobs, his promotions, all of it lined up exactly as the fortune teller said. If I had known the fortune teller earlier, I wouldn't have had to make so many mistakes. But at least I know now, and that's what matters. He leaned closer, speaking in a serious tone. Listen carefully. You have to marry a woman who will give birth to the first child in December. That's the only way your son will rise to become a top executive in his company, and that child could even become a future president someday. You understand? I was completely stunned. My jaw practically dropped at the idea. So that was why that mother and son had rushed into 2 marriages and 2 divorces. Their reckless decisions were all because of this unshakable belief. They truly believed that a December-born child would completely change their lives, turning everything 180 degrees. Even though my husband was talented and had a decent education, he had struggled to find success in his career. But the fortune teller, this mysterious Yangchen figure, had somehow guided him and helped him advance. After that, my father-in-law admitted, They became obsessed with trusting every prediction the fortune teller made. It was strange. As I listened to the story, my blood boiled at first. The injustice and manipulation made me furious. But by the time the story ended, my anger cooled. My mind had switched into rational mode, able to think clearly. "I don't understand," my father-in-law added with a wry smile. "Even after learning all this, you're thinking about divorce?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Now that I know the ugly truth behind this marriage, of course I'm thinking about divorce. And you too, you should consider divorcing your wife. But don't feel guilty on her account because of your mother-in-law. What you know might not even be the full story." "That's what I believe." "What do you mean?" he asked, clearly puzzled. "It's strange," I continued. "Your wife had so many complaints about your mother-in-law, yet she personally took care of her during her illness. Why would she do that if she truly felt that way? It doesn't make sense, does it?" "Yes, that's probably it," I said, thinking carefully. "She's probably thinking about the inheritance she'll leave behind when she passes away, right?" "No," my father-in-law replied, shaking his head. "Whether she takes care of her mother or not, the ancestral rights and responsibilities will go to me. There's no reason for her to try and impress me now. She doesn't need to play the devoted daughter-in-law role for inheritance or favor. And if she really wanted the property, she wouldn't be nursing the sick so carefully. She'd probably just wait for her mother to pass faster." I frowned, realizing he had a point. That's why it seems so strange," I said. "If it were really your mother, that wouldn't be typical behavior for her. She wouldn't act so devoted without reason. That's why I find it suspicious." "I'll figure it out myself," I decided firmly. "But I can't just quietly agree to divorce. There's no way I can let this go quietly." "Quietly agree to divorce? Then what are you going to do?" my father-in-law asked, raising an eyebrow. "Revenge," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not the type of person to just sit back and be tricked like that. I can't let two people manipulate me, lie to me, and use their child's life as part of their plan without paying a price." I glanced at him, confident in my resolve. They used two women and they didn't even care about the lives or worth of the children involved. That kind of behavior has consequences, and I intend to make sure they face them. I asked him to keep this conversation a secret for now, explaining that he mustn't tell anyone that we had talked. Then I started planning carefully, focusing on a revenge strategy that required more patience and precision than a simple divorce. "By the way," I added, trying to change the mood slightly, "Mother's celebrating a milestone birthday this year. 70, right? Would she like to go on a cruise for her birthday?" "A cruise? Oh, that would be wonderful." "You mean to send her?" my father-in-law asked, surprised. "Of course, we have to do something special. It's not just a regular birthday, it's a milestone. But if she wants to go somewhere else, let me know. I have a friend who works at a travel agency, and I can make the reservations for her anywhere she wants to go." "Oh, anything is fine," he said, smiling. "I just hope she enjoys it. Maybe it shouldn't be me taking her. She deserves this kind of treat." From that moment on, I made sure to carefully plan even the smallest details to make her feel happy. Every time she smiled or felt joyful, it was satisfying for me too. She felt like she was soaring, and watching her enjoy herself gave me the sense that my plans were working, not just in her happiness, but in setting the stage for the careful, deliberate revenge I had in mind. It's true what they say, the higher you climb, the harder the fall. The pain hits much deeper when you've reached a peak. That wasn't just true for me. It was the same for my husband. In the beginning, I wasn't exactly the type to be overly affectionate or cute, but he liked women who were playful and charming. So I made an effort in those first months of dating. I acted a little more cheerful, teased him, and complimented him constantly, telling him he was the best, the smartest, the most capable man I'd ever met. And he loved it. He absolutely loved it. I was also independent. I had a solid career and earned good money. I didn't let him control the house, didn't expect him to do anything he didn't want to, and always made him feel appreciated, like he was truly my partner. He was thrilled, of course. With all that, he even brought up the idea of filing our marriage registration before I did. something he'd never done with any of his previous wives. "Hey, how about we go file the marriage registration tomorrow?" he said one evening. "Marriage registration?" "I thought we'd wait until after we have a baby," I said, a little surprised. I was thinking about it and, well, we're not that young anymore. "Why wait until then? We could just do it now," he said, shrugging. I thought about it. Honestly, we didn't have to rush. Our home was already under my name, so there was no issue with the mortgage or finances. And since we weren't expecting a child yet, there was no legal urgency either. "You don't have to do it right now," I said gently. "It's not like there's a reason to rush. We can wait a bit. Once we have a baby, we'll naturally handle it. Even if you got pregnant before, it wouldn't be too late." He seemed a little disappointed, but agreed to follow my lead. I could tell he was eager, yet willing to let me decide. I have to admit, I was secretly a little worried. Filing the marriage registration would make things more official, more legal. And later, it could create more complications, more paperwork, more responsibilities, more things to manage if anything went wrong. Living together that way, though, revealed something important. We both had our shameless, unconventional sides. We both could be brazen, bold, and sometimes illogical. And it became more apparent in small moments. I remember one particular day vividly. My mother-in-law came to our new home with a basket of side dishes she had prepared herself. She had brought them over for no reason other than to assert her presence in our marriage. At first, I smiled politely, thinking she was being thoughtful. But as I watched, I realized there was more to it than simple generosity. It wasn't just kindness, it was control disguised as care. And that was only the beginning of what I'd come to learn about the complex, messy world I had stepped into. "Oh my gosh, is this real? Are these really diamonds?" I asked, my eyes wide with excitement. "Yes," he said with a smile. "I bought this bracelet to celebrate my first paycheck after switching jobs." I picked it up carefully, letting the light hit the stones. "Wow, it's beautiful. No wonder it's diamonds. The sparkle is completely different from anything else." I couldn't stop admiring it all evening. But when I went to check it again later that night, something shocking had happened. The diamond bracelet was gone. Just like that, vanished. I couldn't believe it. I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and frustration all at once. I had been careful. I knew exactly where I left it, and no one else had been in the room. There was only one person who could have taken it, my mother-in-law. And the worst part? Even knowing it was mine, she had the nerve to touch it anyway. It wasn't just rude, it was completely outrageous. No normal person would do something like that. Even though I knew who had taken it, I decided to report it to the police. I wanted to make sure it was official, documented, and that the bracelet could be traced if anything happened to it. Later, I got a call from my mother-in-law. I could hear the shock in her voice. You didn't, did you? Did you call the police?" she asked. "Yes," I said calmly. "The police contacted you as part of their process. I didn't report you specifically. They just need to check with anyone who might have seen the bracelet that night." "Oh, they actually called you? From the police?" "Yes," I replied. "They said whenever something like this disappears, they have to interview everyone who had a chance to touch it. It's just standard procedure. Don't worry, it's nothing personal." She hesitated, probably feeling a little guilty. "You're always so dramatic. You think a bracelet is enough to call the police?" she muttered. "Maybe it seems dramatic to you, but this bracelet means a lot to me," I said. "It's not just valuable in money, it's a gift that celebrates an important milestone. And since it's registered, if someone tries to sell it, the police can track it immediately. That's all I'm doing here, making sure it's protected." I think that finally made her pause. From the way she reacted, I could tell she hadn't meant to steal it outright. She probably just wanted to look at it or try it on, maybe even planned to return it later. But no matter the reason, it wasn't hers to touch. Even my husband got annoyed with me for reporting it. "Why do you have to call the police? It's your mom, you're making a big deal out of nothing," he said. I laughed a little, incredulous. "I didn't tell the police to contact her. It's just the way the procedure works. And honestly, if someone sneaks into your home and takes something valuable, isn't it normal to protect it?" He sighed but didn't argue further. At that moment, I realized something important. Some things, no matter how close the person is to you, still require boundaries. Respect has to exist, even in a family. Otherwise, what's left? And that diamond bracelet? It wasn't just jewelry. It was a reminder that I needed to stand up for myself, even when it meant facing uncomfortable truths. Wait a minute, I said, frowning. How do you even know my things might be missing? Shouldn't you have stepped in to handle it? Why are you acting so calm, almost like you already know who did it?
Huh? Who?
I don't know who the thief is, my husband replied, clearly annoyed. Then just don't say anything. It just makes me suspicious, I muttered. You didn't take it, did you? Why would I ever take it? When would I even have time to do that? He shouted back, sounding more frustrated than angry. We both paused, tension thick in the air. Then, almost magically, the bracelet appeared the next day. It had somehow slipped under the wardrobe. My husband had found it, holding it up like a trophy. Ah, looks like you dropped it and it slid under there, he said casually. I stared at the floor. Under the wardrobe? That's impossible. Well, if you're rushing around getting ready, things can slip anywhere. Just be more careful next time, he shrugged. And that was the thing, we had little moments like this all the time. But I didn't act out of anger. I let things slide because I had a bigger plan. I was gathering proof of the fraudulent marriages. I secretly recorded conversations, collected evidence, and pieced together the story of both the first and second wives, things even my father didn't know the full truth about. Once they learned why they had really been divorced, both women were completely shocked and devastated. The first wife was barely getting by, raising her daughter with a tiny amount of child support. The second wife, on the other hand, somehow received a huge sum, around 50 million won, as part of her divorce settlement. But as I dug deeper, I realized the money didn't come from where anyone expected. There were connections and manipulations I hadn't imagined. And the thought that one of them had a child on top of everything else, it was insane. I had to resist feeling hopeless. I reminded myself that my father-in-law was a capable man, running a successful company, providing for the family, even buying a car for my husband. And yet, here we were, caught in a mess of lies, false marriages, and deception. It was maddening. And what made it worse was that my husband kept saying absurd things like, if I knew it wasn't a son, I wouldn't have married her. We're claiming damages. I just stared at him.
How could he talk like that?
I had married him under a lie, yes, but now, trying to navigate the chaos of everyone's lies and the legal implications, it was like my mind couldn't even keep up. I couldn't decide what to do next, because everything felt so unreal. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a lost bracelet or petty arguments. This was about exposing the truth, protecting myself, and finally making sense of a lifetime of manipulation and fraud. So, basically, they said, if you pay us, we'll agree to a divorce, I explained. Yes, my father-in-law nodded slowly. But they never said exactly how much, right? It was just about child support for the baby, all at once. If you pay that, then we'll do the divorce, I added. And that's how 50 million won came into the picture, he said, shaking his head. At first, they asked for 20 million won. I continued. But when I thought about it, giving them only that and just vanishing from their lives, it felt so unfair. I felt cheated. So I asked for 50 million instead. My mother got annoyed, scolding me like, why do you want 3 million more? She said it like it was ridiculous. I thought, I'll just have to deal with that old hag behind me. Old hag, my father-in-law frowned. Who are you talking about? I don't know, I admitted, shrugging. She just muttered to herself, and I didn't want to ask because she might get angry. So I stayed quiet. I paused, then remembered. Wait a minute, when did this happen? About 2 years ago, I said quietly. And in that moment, a shocking realization hit me. That was around the same time the grandmother, my husband's grandmother, had collapsed. My father-in-law had thought that the money the second wife took was just the savings my mother had kept over the years. He didn't know the full story. But as I explained everything, he went silent, clearly stunned. Then suddenly, a thought seemed to strike him. You said something feels off. Maybe what happened with grandmother collapsing has something to do with your mother, he said slowly. Apparently, my mother-in-law had been careful. She had installed cameras without anyone knowing, keeping an eye on everything. You mean Aunt?
Where?
In grandmother's room? I asked, confused. Yes, he confirmed. Exactly there. Just wait and see. Father-in-law decided to contact my aunt right away. But honestly, I didn't expect much. The cameras were from 2 years ago, and usually footage only stays saved for about a month. It seemed impossible that any proof would still exist. Yet in that moment, I realized how carefully they had planned everything. All the money, the lies, even the timing of events. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. And now, slowly, the truth was finally starting to come to light. But the shocking thing was, the footage from 2 years ago had actually been saved. Apparently, my cousin had been managing it all along, carefully copying and keeping every video of grandmother. She planned to give the recordings to her own mother later, after grandmother passed away. At the time, when I heard that mother-in-law had discovered grandmother collapsed, I didn't think much of it. I never imagined checking the video would reveal anything. But when I finally did look at it, I was completely stunned. On the day grandmother collapsed, mother-in-law was there with her. Right there in the footage, just standing beside her, watching everything unfold. I couldn't believe my eyes. How could she act so casually, as if nothing had happened? It was shocking, but it also explained a lot of the strange behavior I had noticed before. Then, the conversation shifted to money. What about 30 million won? You just got 20 recently, someone said. Well, apparently the settlement money is still needed. What should we do? I replied, feeling frustrated. I couldn't shake the sense that something was off. This doesn't make sense. Choi Jian wouldn't have any reason to do this. Nobody else I can say for sure. But Choi Jian? He's not that kind of person. I should call and confirm. Mother, please stop, I warned. If she finds out you've involved yourself, it will only make things worse. Don't let her know anything yet. But then mother-in-law chimed in. You don't understand your son at all.
He can be greedy sometimes.
This time, he just wanted the second marriage to go smoothly, and he got tricked into some kind of investment scam. She explained that with 30 million won, everything could be solved for good. So she just decided to help. After all, she had money. The large sum she received when father-in-law passed, which everyone knew was safely tucked away in her bank accounts. I don't have that kind of money, I said, feeling anxious. Come on, just give it, she insisted. Let's make this right. I handed over my phone, but she was acting strangely. Why are you acting like this? You know I can see everything through the banking app, I said. Give it to me. Now, she demanded. It's your son's life at stake. Why are you being so stingy? I argued. But mother-in-law ignored me. She was completely focused on the phone, trying to solve the problem, her eyes glued to the screen. Then, out of nowhere, grandmother grabbed the back of her neck and collapsed. She was very old, and even a small spike in blood pressure could be dangerous. Mother-in-law, still holding onto grandmother's phone, was finally startled. She quickly called 119 for help. Watching all this, my father-in-law and aunt were completely shocked. They couldn't believe what had just happened right in front of them. It was one of those moments where everything, money, lies, family tensions, suddenly collided. And in that chaos, the truth behind so many years of deception started slowly coming to light. Later, I found out the real reason mother-in-law had insisted on taking care of grandmother. She wasn't doing it out of kindness. She was worried that if grandmother woke up and started talking, the truth about her actions would come out to the rest of the family. And she certainly didn't earn any praise for her care. In fact, she was known in that hospital room as a cruel and nasty daughter-in-law. The nurses whispered about her behind her back, and the other patients avoided her. She had a reputation for being manipulative and harsh. Of course, I wanted to confront her immediately and expose everything she had done, but I knew I had to follow the right steps. I couldn't just act recklessly. The first step was to make sure my husband was out of the house. That was essential before I could move forward with my plan. So, I spoke with my father and mother, and explained the situation. I asked for their understanding and support as I prepared the final stage of my plan. The outward plan was simple and believable. I suggested we take my parents on a relaxing trip to a hot spring in Japan. On the surface, it looked like a family vacation, a chance to enjoy some quiet time together. But underneath, the trip had a very different purpose. It was part of my careful plan to take control and reclaim my space. "Hey, honey, what do we do?" "I have to go into work today," my husband said one morning, clearly concerned. "Today? But isn't that the day we're supposed to fly to Japan?" I asked casually. "I already took the day off, but there's a problem with one of the contracts on my project. I might need to be at the office." "Don't worry," I said smoothly. "You know the project well. And if there's a problem with the contract, the project manager has to handle it, right?" He hesitated, looking frustrated. But Mom and Dad were really looking forward to this trip. I smiled and reassured him. "It's fine. This time, you can stay back and work while I take them. They'll enjoy spending time with me, and you can handle work without stress." Eventually, he agreed, thinking it was just a normal change of plans. I had everything prepared: hotel addresses, travel schedules, the works. I made it seem like I was simply taking care of my parents, but in reality, the real operation was happening at home. On the day of the trip, I gave my own excuse at work, so I didn't actually leave for the airport. My father also came along to see off my parents, but claimed he wasn't feeling well and decided not to join the trip. That left the house empty, exactly as I needed. While my husband was out of the house, I moved quickly. I packed up all of his belongings and sent them to his family's home. Everything he owned in the house was gone. Then I moved into a brand new office cell I had already prepared. And the old apartment, the one that had been officially under my name as the marital home, was already sold. The house was no longer ours. It was a bold and decisive move, but I had planned every detail carefully. By the time anyone realized, the stage was already set, and I was finally in control of my own life again. After my father finished signing the divorce papers, he packed up the few belongings he had and went to my aunt's house. That's when the real chaos began, a messy, bitter fight that dragged on like a storm with no end. I took legal action against my husband for fraud, and my father and aunt filed charges against my mother-in-law for theft and elder abuse. The entire situation had escalated into a full-blown family legal battle. At first, my husband tried to act as if he was innocent. "Quiet now," he demanded, clearly irritated. I snapped back. "Quiet? How can I be quiet when my life, and my son's life, has been turned upside down by lies and manipulation? You're the one who's stolen, deceived, and hurt everyone." The court sessions were stressful and emotional. I could barely keep my composure while explaining how my mother-in-law had been cruel to the elderly grandmother and manipulative in every possible way. But despite the drama, justice moved forward. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law, who had thought she would only face a small fine as a first-time offender, received a prison sentence of 1 year and 6 months. The lawyers explained that because she showed no remorse and refused to settle or cooperate, the court imposed a harsher punishment. Even when she begged, crawling on her hands and knees, asking for mercy, my father remained unshaken. My husband, on the other hand, only had to pay a fine of about 5 million won, which was frustrating. Despite all the evidence I had gathered with the help of the fortune teller's records, his punishment felt far too light. Still, I had my revenge on the mother and son duo. The sense of justice brought me some peace. I knew that at least they had felt the consequences of their actions. I thought I could finally breathe and live without fear of sudden attacks. But my husband never admitted his mistakes. He was plotting to take revenge on me. One day, while I was walking home from work, someone suddenly pushed me from behind. By sheer luck, a colleague walking the same way behind me pushed me out of the path, just in time. A brick thrown by my ex-husband narrowly missed my head and smashed into pieces on the ground. People nearby helped me, and we were able to catch him and call the police. He screamed at me, "This is all your fault, Park Soo. You ruined my life." I stood there, incredulous.
No.
You ruined your own life. You wrapped yourself in your mother's lies, clung to ridiculous superstitions, and deceived everyone. That's on you, not me. I warned him. I'm not going to let you get away with this. I will make sure you face the consequences. And believe me, I will follow through to the end. He sneered. Go ahead and try.
You don't even know me.
And I don't know you. You think I'll just tremble in fear? I smiled calmly. Try me. I'll see this through all the way. My ex-husband is now in prison. I had hired an expensive lawyer to file charges for attempted murder. He had claimed it was an impulsive act fueled by anger, but the evidence proved otherwise. He had bought the brick in advance, tracked my movements, and waited for the perfect moment. The court recognized it as attempted murder, and he received a 5-year sentence. Life really is strange. You try to step carefully, testing every stone before crossing, but still, the unexpected can happen at any moment. Even now, I still check in with my father-in-law and aunt. The last time we met, his face had changed. He looked happier, lighter, as if a huge burden had been lifted. Though my marriage started with deception and brought me immense pain, I take pride in knowing that, through all of this, I helped save a person's dignity and restored some sense of justice to our family. I think my father and I both deserve to feel that we faced life's challenges head-on and came out stronger. And now, I hope that from here on, only good things will come my way. After all the chaos, betrayals, and court battles, life finally began to settle into a rhythm I could recognize as peace. The storms of lies, deceit, and manipulation had passed, and what remained was clarity. I had faced people who thought they could control my life, who believed that greed, superstition, and deception could dictate the fates of everyone around them. But I had survived, not just survived, but conquered. The ex-husband who had once threatened my life with a brick, who had tried to drag me back into fear and danger, was behind bars. Every step he had planned, every sneaky plot, had failed. Justice had been served, slowly but firmly. Knowing that he was paying for his crimes gave me a sense of closure I had never expected. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my safety, my dignity. The mother-in-law, once so confident in her schemes, had learned that cruelty and manipulation always leave a mark. Though she had tried to manipulate and harm, the law had stepped in, and she faced the consequences of her actions. Watching her powerless, knowing that she could no longer hurt anyone else, was oddly satisfying. Not cruelty, but justice. My father, my constant support, and my aunt, who had helped us gather evidence and fight through the chaos, were finally able to breathe. Seeing their relief, watching their faces relax for the first time in years, reminded me why I had persevered. This wasn't just my fight, it was a family fight, and together, we had reclaimed our lives. I moved into my new home, my safe space, my sanctuary. Every corner reflected my hard work, my independence, my resilience. I filled it with memories of the present, not shadows of the past. And as I settled into the rhythm of life without fear, I discovered a new strength within myself. I was no longer the woman defined by others' lies or manipulation. I was the woman who had faced the storm and walked through fire unscathed. Over time, my relationship with my father-in-law softened into something unexpectedly warm. We shared laughter, advice, and stories, things that had seemed impossible when the weight of betrayal hung over us. Life, I realized, had a way of balancing itself out. People who had tried to break us were gone from our lives, replaced with honesty, loyalty, and love from the ones who mattered. And then there was me, finally free to dream without fear. I pursued my career, my passions, and my happiness, unburdened by anyone else's schemes. I traveled, explored, and lived life boldly. I celebrated victories big and small, surrounded by people I trusted and loved. The lessons I had learned, the resilience, the patience, the sharpness to see through lies, became my greatest tools, shaping a life richer and fuller than I had ever imagined. In quiet moments, I thought back on the chaos, the stolen bracelets, the false pregnancies, the legal battles, the threats, but now they were just chapters in a story of triumph. I understood, finally, that life's pain is temporary if met with courage, and justice, though slow, has a way of reaching the end. Looking forward, I could finally say with certainty, I had survived everything, and I would thrive. No one could manipulate me again, no scheme could shake me, and no lie could ever dim my light. Life was mine, fully, beautifully, and fiercely. And with that knowledge, I smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning of a life filled with hope, peace, and endless possibilities.